Hello, and welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. We are here to talk about jumping, high jumping, long jumping, triple jumping, even some pole vaulting, training, talking with coaches. And I am your host, Troy Haynes, and I'm honored today to have with us Kendall Gustafson, formerly from UCLA. She is now coaching in Texas, and she is going to tell us everything that she's been doing. So I have not met Kendall before. We've talked on Instagram. I saw her page, and once I found out that she was a former Bruin and a heptathlete who made it to the US Olympic trials, I was more than happy to reach out to her, and she graciously responded. So we're going to let her into the waiting room right now and get going here. All right, and there she is. Turn up my volume. Still can't hear you, Kendall.
Hello.
There you are.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I just gave everybody the send up here on the podcast. Told them that you were a Bruin and that you were a heptathlete who made it to the US Olympic trials. Which goes along well. My latest series has been either former Olympians, US only so far. I got Doug Nordquist, one of the first podcasts, and then his buddy Leo Williams, who was on the 84 team before you were born. And then we've been talking with a lot of people that have been to the US Olympic trials, males and females, and some from Canada. One of the girls that I train, gals, my wife keeps telling me, call them women. She just jumped 6'1.5" and is now the #1 jumper in Canada. And she went to the trials 2021. Yeah. And then Paul Gustafson. So we've got Canadians, we've got Americans, and then you fit right in with that. So tell me more, Kendall. I saw your obviously saw you on Instagram first and was impressed with the work you're doing there. Tell us about, going to UCLA first and kind of how you ended up in Texas of all places.
I know. I've been all over the place at this point. So I grew up a true Bruin, I'll say. Both my parents went to UCLA. Mm-hmm. Actually, both my grandparents on my paternal side also went to UCLA.
Go so Bruins.
It's in my blood. Right. I grew up going to the dual meets and all of that good stuff. I grew up 8-9 miles from UCLA. So awesome. It was home. Now, interestingly enough, out of high school, I was never recruited by UCLA. Mm-hmm. And initially I went to Duke. So I decided to pick up everything, move all the way across the country and end up in North Carolina. And I was there for 2 years and it just wasn't for me. I missed home. I wanted to be back in sunny Southern California.
Right.
And so I picked up, moved everything back all the way across the country, ended up at UCLA. And by that time, it was a new coaching staff from when I was in high school. Right. And they welcomed me with open arms. And I would say transferring to UCLA was probably one of the best decisions I ever made.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Finish your thought.
I just said it was, I don't know. Out of high school, I think maybe the fact that it was so close to home wasn't as enticing for me.
Right.
Whereas after being so far away, coming back, I was like, oh, why did I need to go anywhere? This is the best place I possibly could have been. So, it all's well that ends well, right?
So where did you go to high school out here in California?
I went to Palisades Charter High School.
Okay.
Right there in the Pacific Palisades. I didn't actually live in the Palisades. I lived in Mar Vista.
Okay.
So not too far either, but my grandparents lived in the Palisades and I spent a lot of time there when I was younger.
Now, were you just in high school? Were you just track and field, or did you do volleyball, basketball, anything else?
I played volleyball my freshman year of high school, mostly because my sister was on the team. My sister was a senior in high school when I was a freshman. And she was primarily a volleyball player. She actually played volleyball in college at Denison University in Ohio. But I wanted to just be on the team with her and kind of enjoyed it. But after my freshman year, I decided to kind of just go solely to track and field. At this point, I was doing the heptathlon already in high school.
Okay.
And doing 7 events took a little bit more than just,
Right.
1 or 2. And so it was helpful for me to have the fall to kind of train some of the other events as opposed to just playing volleyball and then hopping in the spring.
Now, how did that happen for many people? I think it takes maybe a junior Olympics background, but how did you get pulled into the heptathlon? A lot of people don't even know what that is. They start doing track in high school. They don't even, you'd say heptathlon, they're like, what's that?
Truly. I want to say, so the first event that I started in track was long jump, actually. I think I went and entered a YMCA kiddie track meet, right? And I loved it. I loved everything about it. And it was the common theme across all the other sports. I played everything growing up, and the common theme was that I was fast and I was strong, and so a lot of people kind of pushed me in the direction of track and field. And I kind of, honestly, I'm not even sure how it really happened, but as I spent more time in track, I just wanted to try another event and try another event and try another event. And I loved all of them, and I didn't want to choose. And then I think there was some point when someone said, hey, there's one event where you can do all of them, right? And I was like, well, that sounds like it's the one for me. And I got lucky enough. I found a coach in high school who had a little bit of a background in all of them, and in the multis, and it allowed me to at least get a little bit of exposure, to some of the stranger ones like javelin, right? You can't even throw javelin in high school in California.
Yeah, in California, you can't. Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many grass fields I've been kicked out of.
Right.
My dad and I would jump fences with my javelin and try to go and find places to throw. And that was the most difficult one in California for sure.
Yeah, I get it. So you are competing in those now. There are heptathlon competitions in high school, but they're like the big ones, right? Like you have to go like Nike International, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, I think I would do like youth nationals and then junior Olympics and stuff like that. And then my senior year of high school, I went to junior nationals, which is now the U20 meet. And it was there where I made my first US team. I finished second there. And I went to Colombia for the Pan American Games.
Wow, that must have been exciting.
It was very fun. It was very, very fun.
Awesome. Wow, that's some rarefied air there. So you did that coming straight out. That was still in high school? You made that team?
So that was after my senior year of high school.
How cool is that?
Yeah, I actually missed my first week of college because I was in Colombia competing.
Tough sacrifice there, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of that was a crazy time. I spent the summer training, ended up in Colombia, competed there, and then flew straight from Colombia to North Carolina to go to Duke. Yeah. I had to do this weird packing situation where I was packing for Pan American Games and then also college.
Right.
At the same time.
Okay. So now jumping to Duke, the first question that popped in my head, you've been to 2 of the universities that have the perennial basketball powers in the nation. So what is it like in Carolina when it comes to basketball, like going to games? I'm sure you've been to some on both campuses. So
yeah, there's a reason they call them the Cameron Crazies, because it's crazy in Cameron Indoor. It's a really fun atmosphere, and the tenting that they do, I don't know if you've heard about that before the games. They have the students to go in specifically to the Duke versus North Carolina games. They tent for about 6 weeks before the games.
Wow.
And people have to be in their tent. It's like groups of 6 or something like that. And there has to be at least 2 people in the tent at all times. And they come and check on them regularly and make sure there's somebody there. it looks like a homeless encampment. It's not sanitary. It was really gross, but it was insane what these people would do to get into a basketball game. But it was absolutely electric when you're in there. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And there's a reason they haven't changed that stadium or made it bigger or anything like that.
Right.
It's really special the way it is.
So UCLA fans are a little bit more laid back.
A little bit. I mean, just in general, that's how we do things in LA, a little more chill.
Yeah.
But Poly is also so fun. I've been into some really fun games there.
Mm-hmm.
Couple buzzer beaters, stadium full. It was very fun to go to the basketball games. And especially, I probably haven't been to a basketball game at UCLA since I was a student there.
Mm-hmm.
So 2017 or so, but recently I've enjoyed, following along as well, because they've obviously been doing well lately.
Yeah, that's crazy. So then 4 years in high school, then you went off to Duke, came back and started up again. Now was that difficult? I know you said it was difficult being on the East Coast and everything. What is it? Was everything indoors like you'd expect for a good part of the fall and all that?
No.
And
I think that was a big thing for me, is I didn't enjoy the weather there quite so much. I think, yes, I'm probably spoiled. But there was an indoor facility, I'll call it. There wasn't an indoor track though. So the majority of the training was outdoors. And the fall honestly wasn't the issue. It was coming back in like January, February. It would snow several times and we'd be kind of stuck inside, and I don't know, my body didn't agree with it. My joints hurt all the time, felt like an old woman.
Right.
And I just immediately, I knew I would like come home for spring break and spend the week, as I like to call it, defrosting. And I would just feel so much better. And I was like, I think there was a reason, that was happening. I was like, I want to be back. I want to be home. Feel happier and healthier, more sunshine. So,
crazy.
It just made sense for me to head on home.
It's funny that you bring that up, because the whole part about getting back home and getting to the sun, it was like, I was my first year last year teaching at the NAIA level. And we were at Azusa Pacific, had the big meet, same weekend as Mount Sac this year. I don't know if it's always that way, but I've never been paying attention before. So we're at this meet and there were so many schools there. I could not get over it. I mean, I'm seeing uniforms and names of like basketball schools from back east, like Marquette was there. I'm like, Marquette? I'm like, what are you guys doing out here? And they're like, we're trying to find the sun. Like, these people were laying out at the meet, right? They're pulling up their shirts. You're getting all this white flesh, this fish belly white skin, and they're just like, they're lathering up, slathering. I'm like, are you guys still competing? Or like, I'm just get out of my way. I'm trying to get some sun. It was a serious deal. I'm like, everybody that I talked to just like, oh, we're just glad to be outside, because this was like in, I don't know when Mount Sac was, mid-April or whatever, but man, it was like these people just hadn't seen the sun for months, and I tell my story to my kids about that too, because my sophomore year at UCLA, we went up to Washington State for Pac-10s. And, this is late April, early May by then, right?
Yeah.
For Pac-10. So you're thinking Southern California, we'd be like, hey, it's almost summer. It was cold up there, man. It was 50 degrees, slate gray skies, drizzly, and we get there and we're just, all the Southern California kids like, walking along. And so we're checking out the campus, right? And a hole opens up in the clouds and the sun comes down, like one of those pictures where you just see like the rays of the sun coming, through a dark background, which I've always loved pictures like that. But you see the sun come out, and I'm not kidding. People stopped and it was like, and they started running into their houses and getting their lawn chairs and bringing them out. And because we're walking by the dorms, right? And they're sticking their chairs out and laying out in the sun. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, these people never see the sun. I totally understand sun worship now, like, from pagan days. It's like, oh my God, it's the sun after like 6 months of not seeing it or something,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's important. I like to call myself solar powered. So
Right.
it's pretty important if you feel like it really, like I just feed off of it. And so it was hard. It was hard going weeks at a time, not seeing it. And it definitely affects your mood and, and just how you feel in general.
I get it. I still have an article written when I was in high school, after the Masters meet. Guy said something, and I said, yeah, I really don't like even jumping at night, because it was a night meet that year, and I'd much rather do, out in the day. And I was the same way. Hotter the better. I mean, if it was 90 degrees, whatever, I wasn't one of those people that was going to wilt in the sun. I was like, hey, I'm loose. Like 90 degrees was required, to get me moving. I think when I'm retired, I've got to be one of those people that moves to Florida or, whatever. Jerry Seinfeld always says it's like a rule. When you retire, you got to move to Florida, or, Texas would be good too. The only time I went to Texas, my senior year at UCLA, we went to Fort Worth. SMU put on a big meet, and tell you, we got off the plane, and when they weren't chauffeuring us around in these minivans, this is back before SMU got the death penalty for football. So they just had money just oozing out. I'm sure you've been in that area. It's just ridiculous. They had these carpeted locker rooms with pictures over each locker, and we're like walking around like it was a museum when we were in there. They picked us up, and we only sent 15 people, so they picked us up from the airport in minivans. They took us to these 2-bedroom condos we're the visitors, right? I was like, this is really nice. I'm sitting around going, wow, I wonder what they get like, if we're getting this. And when we got up the next morning to go out to the track, it was hot. It was like, I think it was late April. And I tell you what, if you haven't been in it, it's an experience to get out to Texas, Fort Worth. At that time, it felt like 95 and like 100% humidity. Like my usual routine was to jog 2 laps and start doing my running drills and all that stuff. I ran a half a lap. I literally jogged a half a lap, and I go, not only did I not do any drills or anything else, I literally just walked the rest of the way, sat down next to my bag, and I said, I am good to go. I was completely warmed up. It was like jogging in a sauna, So
it's good for your body as well. So
yeah, I remember I was like, man, if I could warm up like this all the time, I cut my warm up in half or by 75%. I remember doing a couple run throughs and just like, let's go. I'm good.
Yeah, for real.
So now tell us how you got started, because we're tracking your career. I want to talk about the Olympic trial year. How did it go once you left Duke? You came back to UCLA. You're still doing the HEP, and then get us to the Olympic trials.
All right, it was a journey. So I mean, something that I haven't talked about yet, but when I talk about my track career, I have to talk about it, is all the injuries that I had. So I think in my time I'll even start my freshman year of high school up until last year.
Right.
Okay. So pretty much my entire truly competitive track career, I think I had 3 years where I was healthy.
Yeah.
In those, I don't know, however many. So when I got to UCLA, it was 2015. So it was my first full track season at UCLA was 2016, which was the Olympic year. I was coming off of a couple injuries that I was dealing with at Duke, but nothing too serious. Kind of was just get rolling again and, finding my confidence and all of that good stuff. And then my very first outdoor meet, I tore my meniscus in my knee.
Oh.
So that was one of my easier ones, I guess I'll say. I had previously I tore my ACL in high school, actually. So I had already been through that surgery and kind of gone and went through it. And then this was the same knee. I tore my meniscus, our first outdoor meet, and kind of just made the decision that I wanted to push through that year And because the way a meniscus works is it like I had torn it, but it would sometimes be okay. And then sometimes like a little flap would get stuck. The whole thing would swell up, lock up.
Impingement, locking, yeah. Heard all those stories,
yeah. So it was like very much a rolling of the dice on what was going to happen to my knee that day. And so I decided to play that game all season, and just some days it held up on me, some days it didn't. And that's how it went. And I knew what to expect. The season as a whole went fine. It was okay. But not what I hoped it would be if I had had a healthy knee.
Right.
Following year, things were going well. Indoors went well. I think I was, second in our conference meet, and things were coming along. And then one of the first practices outdoors, I did a pop up into the long jump pit, stepped into what must have been a hole, and heard a loud pop in my ankle and tore all the lateral ligaments in my ankle.
No. Okay.
So that one pretty much blew the rest of that season. It was not a fun year. I did the same thing. At this point, I'd already redshirted a season while I was at Duke. Right. So I didn't have a true, unless I wanted to eventually do a redshirt and medical redshirt and do a 6th year and all of that nonsense, which is everybody's doing that now. But, back a few years ago, I didn't really want to do a 6th year. And so I was like, hey, I'm just going to keep pushing through. I'm enjoying everything. I'm enjoying my teammates and it's a bummer, but I can only control what I can control. And these injuries this is just my lot right now. Yeah. And so I just kind of kept pushing through. That was a really tough season competing on the ankle. That was very painful. So I came back. I had one more year. So that was 2017. So this was now 2018, my 5th year, my senior year at UCLA. And pretty much, for all intents and purposes, my college career up to this point, nothing had happened. Like I had been to NCAA regionals in high jump and jav, and I had done okay at conference meets and whatever, but like I was so much better than that, and everyone knew it. And it was just, it was a series of unfortunate events, really. And so I had one year where I was like, honestly, guys, we're gonna lay it all out there. We're gonna see what happens. Right. So this is 2018. And from the get-go, I was like, I'm gonna do all the little things right and leave it all out there pretty much. And it was the one season that I think I'll hang my hat on for my college career, because that was season indoors. I broke the school record in the pentathlon. I won the conference championships. Outdoors, there's no breaking the UCLA school record in the heptathlon because it's held by Jackie Joyner Kersee. Yeah. But I'm now second behind her. So that was what I was hoping for. Right. Did well at conference, ended up 4th in the country, All-American. Went on, competed at USA's that year, did well there. That was the year where I kind of broke through, I'll call it. And I think a lot of people were, I don't know. From high school, that was kind of where I should have been tracking the whole time. And it's just like this dead space in the middle because I was just hurt. I was hurt the entire time. And so I kind of grew up there. And then at that point, when I graduated from UCLA, I was like, well, I'm finally healthy in this moment. I can't stop. I can't stop yet. Right. So I went first year out of college. I was training at UCLA. I stayed on, was as a volunteer assistant coach. I continued training. So this is 2019. And I'm going to say 2019 was the healthiest year of my career. I don't think I had any major injuries. And I don't think it's a coincidence that that's also when my PR is from. So it was that first outdoor meet at Brian Clay, actually the meet you were talking about at Azusa Pacific, where I broke 6,000 points in the heptathlon for the first time. Big PR, things were going really well. So that meet actually right there was the one that qualified me for Olympic trials. So this is 2019. The way that the multi-events work is that every other event you have to qualify for trials within that season. But because we do the heptathlon so sparingly compared to other events, they give you a year and a half to qualify.
Yeah.
So I qualified for the 2020 Olympic trials in the 2019 season. And so at that point I was like, hey, cool. Like we're good for the next year or whatever.
Yeah.
I went to USA's that year. I think I finished, I don't remember what place I finished. I was in the top 10 though. And what that qualified me to compete on a Thorpe Cup team. So the Thorpe Cup, I don't know if you know what that is, it's a yearly competition in the multi-events between USA and Germany. Awesome. So basically they take the top three, or they go to the big meets if there's a world champs or an Olympic games or something like that. And then they take the next 5 or 7 and send them into, basically it's a dual meet between USA and Germany in the heptathlon and the decathlon.
Right.
And then they alternate between US and Germany hosting. So that year happened to be in Germany, which was awesome because I got to go travel to Germany, and that was the most fun meet of my entire life. It was so much fun. And I'm still very, 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 very thankful for that meet. And actually to this day, unfortunately, that was the last heptathlon that I completed.
Really?
Yes. Because fast forward 2020, we all know what happened, right? So I'm, starting training. I'm at UCLA. Things are going well in the fall. COVID hits. Everything shuts down. Again, at this point, I am still qualified for Olympic trials. Right. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? And then eventually things are announced, they're going to move everything a year and go from there. And I'm probably I think at this point, the heptathletes and decathletes are the only people that still know that they're qualified. Everyone else is like, okay, well, I got to keep training to qualify. Right. And I knew I was already there. So I was like, well, I need to find a situation where I can keep training, even if there's no more meets in 2020, it doesn't mean I'm just going to sit on my butt for a year and wait around for things. I have to at least put my body through some stuff and give it a sense of that I went through a mini competition season or something like that. So I trained at UCLA as long as I could, but unfortunately everything was shut down. And then even little old me was kicked out. And so I ended up contacting, one of the assistant athletic directors at UCLA. I said, is there a chance at all that I'm going to be able to train at UCLA in the fall or spring? And basically he's like, Kendall, I want to be honest with you. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, okay, again, I'm already qualified, so I can't really stop my career right now.
Right.
So what I ended up doing is this is where the move to Texas comes in.
Right.
And I ended up moving to Houston because my boyfriend, probably should have backed up and introduced him earlier too. My boyfriend was also a high-level decathlete who was training and qualified for Olympic trials.
Awesome.
So I met him at the Thorpe Cup in Germany. So we met each other there, started dating, and then COVID hit. Things open up. He went to Rice and was training at Rice University in Houston, and basically invited me to come down and was like, hey, I'm training. We got an open track. They're willing to come and let you use everything. I said, well, if I'm serious about this and, finishing my career on a strong note, I have to give it, I have to do this. And so I did. I made the move to Houston and started training with Scott, and we, it was a very big life adjustment, but things were going very, very well. Opened my 2021 season with, you know, a lot of good things in long jump, PRs in the shot, all of this good stuff. Then went back to Azusa Pacific for the Brian Clay meet. That was going to be my opener that year. And unfortunately, at that meet, throwing the javelin, feel a massive pop, I'll say, in my knee, and I tear my ACL on my left leg, my plant leg. So this is April 2021. So at that point, I am sitting there, literally I'm lying on the runway at Azusa Pacific, and I go, and my parents come with me to this meet. Scott's over there, he's doing the middle of a decathlon, and they just hear me, you know, scream across the field, and everyone comes running, and I'm laying there, and I go, I'm done. And they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I was like, no, you don't realize that I just tore my ACL. I knew it because I had done it before, unfortunately.
The same knee or the other knee?
Other knee.
Okay.
So I have two lovely scars on both of my knees. It's a big obvious part of my knees. But I knew the moment it happened what I had done and what that meant for myself. And I knew at that moment that was going to be the end of my track career. So unfortunately, you know, came back. I got surgery in Houston. So I ended up going to the Olympic trials, but I didn't compete because I was in a massive knee brace. But I went with Scott and kind of helped. I had been training with him all year. I had been helping and coach him in the decathlon. And so I went to Olympic trials with him and kind of went through the whole thing with him. And I think that was really helpful for me because I think if I had torn my ACL, ended my career, and then just stopped, I think I would have had these really hard withdrawals from the sport, whereas kind of continuing to train through and go to trials with him was like an easy letdown. As opposed to, oh, you're done, bye, see you never.
Yeah, you get to live it a little bit vicariously. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. And it was a fun time. But it kind of segued into the next part of my life because while I was at Olympic trials, I'm there hobbling around in my massive knee brace. I see Coach Frazier, who was at the time there. He was there as a coach from UCLA with one of his throwers, Alyssa. And Coach Frazier was my throws coach at UCLA while I was there. So
a teammate of mine. He and I were on the same team. Yep.
So I made sure that while I was at UCLA, I always threw with Frage because he was the man, and you know, we had such a good relationship, and I loved working with him. So I saw him while I was there. Of course, it's the whole, oh no, what's going on? Everything's, and I basically told him at that moment, I was like, I'm done with track. I can't do this to my body anymore. 3 knee surgeries is enough. So I think that in that moment kind of, I was in his mind. And it was about a month later where I got a phone call from him and he said, hey, I am the new head coach at Texas State University. Would you like to be my jumps coach?
Awesome.
And I go, well, not really doing much else right now. So why not? And made the move out here to San Marcos from Houston. And I literally just finished my first track season as the jump coach at Texas State.
Awesome. Now is that D1, D2? What level are we at?
So we're D1. We're in the Sunbelt Conference.
Okay.
And I had really, in all honesty, not heard much about Texas State before. I, grew up on the West Coast in the Pac-12, all of that stuff. Like, I've never really seen Texas State around, but when I came down here on my interview, I was like, whoa, this place is legit.
Yeah.
I mean, we have great facilities. We have our own track. We have our own weight room. It's a really kind of cool setup. And San Marcos is absolutely beautiful. In my opinion, it is. Yeah. So San Marcos is pretty much halfway between Austin and San Antonio. It's kind of nestled in there, and it's a spot where it's like San Marcos itself is not a massive city. It's a college town, I'll call it, but it's within, 30 to 40 minutes of Austin and San Antonio.
Right.
And it's just it's a really cool spot. And so I was just really impressed with everything I saw. And of course, Coach Frazier, like that man, this is what I tell people. I said, there's about 3 people who could have called me, asking me to take a job, and, I would have picked up and moved my life for. And it happened that one of those 3 people was Frazier, and that he called me. And so I said, okay, fine, I have to do it.
Right.
And I mean, that's the relationship we have. And so I was like, I can't turn down an opportunity to work, for him and with him,
Right.
to kind of build this program up.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're doing all the jumps and the multis? Are you just jumps, or have you kind of?
I'm doing all the jumps and the multis. So high jump, long jump, triple jump, heptathlon, decathlon, and then I also do the training for the pole vaulters. But we have a pole vault coach as well who does all of their technical work.
Right.
So I have a pretty large group of jumpers. I think last year I had 15 or 16. We've gone heavy on the recruiting this year. So next year I'll probably have a group of, 22 to 24
nice
jumpers. But we're really building things up, and we're really excited for the next couple of years.
That's amazing. So all the way through to the U.S. trials, both knees blown. Then you end up coaching with Coach Phillips at Texas State. What's the team mascot? What's the name of the team? Texas State.
We are the Bobcats.
Bobcats. There's a guy I listen to on the radio out here. He does the Angel games, Roger Lodge, and he always has everybody call in, and they'll tell him where they went to high school. And his thing is he's got to try to guess the name of the school. So you guys are like Wildcats or something. I think Wildcats is his fallback if he doesn't know for sure. He knows a surprising number of schools. He knows a surprising number of schools out here whenever I'm listening. But what was my next question? I was thinking of so based on what happened with you and everything else, I had 2 questions that popped in my head. First of all, what advice would you give to the young burgeoning either heptathlete or decathlete that was either thinking about doing it or was already doing it? What kind of advice would you give them to help them get to their highest level?
Well, if there's anybody that's thinking about doing it, my advice is do it.
Right.
If there's the event can be very daunting as a young person learning a lot of different things, especially girls. I'll say a lot of the times girls usually struggle in the throws because it's not necessarily a natural thing that girls grew up, tossing things around. The whole thing is just get yourself exposed to everything, spend time with every event.
Right.
Even if it's not fun or comfortable at any moment, even if it's really weird to throw a javelin, just go and spend time with it. Right. The more exposure and experience you get with every event, that builds up. It builds up later and later and later. I mean, a very common thing that happens is we'll take, just good athletes out of high school and kind of convert them into athletes and decathletes in college. But if it's very attractive to college coaches to see someone, even if it's not a great score, to see someone give a hep and a deck a go in high school and just have the experience of going through it at least once or twice, or, know what it feels like to go through everything.
Right.
And the thing is, it is a very mature event. It takes a long time. There is no mastering 7 or 10 events.
Right.
Nobody ever masters all of them. That's not something that's really possible. I mean, most people never master one event. So, so it's really all about exposing yourself to all of them, giving yourself the opportunity to spend as much time with every event, and also then just making yourself a good athlete. I think that's what I love about the training for the combined events is even though it doesn't feel like it, throwing the shot is making you a better, high jumper or long jumper. Like, it doesn't seem like it's correlated, but it is. It's cross training. And so you may think that, throwing isn't doing anything for your jumps, but it absolutely is.
Right. Yeah, it's when I was there, fortunately, some of the heyday times I watched John Brenner, throw with Art back in '84, with sophomore year, and I watched John Phillips and Frazier, and just a lot of really good athletes. Pole vaulters with Coach Curran. You get to work with Coach Curran, obviously. Some of the best technicians for their events that I've ever been in contact with, and I was there, and I was one of those people that was always listening. I was always listening and asking questions, and I pole vaulted a little bit in high school, so I was always and I was like an 11.6 vaulter. So once these guys started vaulting 15 and 16 in practice, I was like, wow, and I still wanted to try it, but I never really made that leap. But it was like watching the shot putters and the discus throwers. We used to go to Bruin Bowl. I don't know if you ever got to see the lifters go to Bruin Bowl. I don't know if Coach Frazier still did that, but I went there one time with Frazier and Banich and a couple other guys, Dave Wilson, the Iceman, that we went down there, and these guys would try to destroy the bowling lane. Like, the goal was to rocket the ball as fast as possible down the middle of the lane and explode all the pins into the back wall. That was the way they played. And it was like, and they were good. It wasn't that they were rattling it down, side to side. Yeah. It was like hop and pop, it was like 1, 2, and wham. And that arm would come up and that ball would just start moving. Like, you never saw a bowling ball go that fast in your life. So I learned a lot about acceleration and, power, obviously, watching those guys and asking questions. Art Venegas was always willing to talk, about that stuff. So, I remember commenting to someone just this last year watching the Olympics, the guy from Canada that won the gold medal for the decathlon, who just seemed so fast. Like, I think he broke the 100-meter record, right, for the decathlon. Like at 10 whatever, he ran 10.4, 10.3, or I don't know, it was really fast. And I started thinking about how speed has become the dominant thing in almost every event, not just sprinting, but the best high jumpers in the world are fast. They're tall and fast. The best long jumpers, obviously, you're fast. Triple, you're fast. Pole vaulters, Duplantis is fast down the runway. Watching Brian Krauser throw a shot, if you don't see him moving fast at 6'6" through the ring, you're not watching closely enough, because I'm watching him get through 2 times the ring and it's a blur sometimes. Like, man, he's moving quick, So it seems to me that it's not like these things haven't been known, but I think the transition is about here, where it was like, okay, there's power, and then there's, because I always tell my jumpers, I go, you can be the Hulk, you can just power up, and get as strong as you can and be like the Hulk. The madder Hulk gets, the stronger Hulk gets, and the Hulk doesn't fly, he just jumps. But I'm like, really, the technique is, you look at some of these guys and you're like, these guys are tall, skinny guys. They're not powerful. I'm like, yes, but power is force times velocity. So, you've got both ends, the velocity end is really important. So it just seems to me like everything's moving so much faster than I remember, even 20 years ago. I feel dated, My other question for you, Kendall, was, in this day of equality and everything else, do you ever foresee a day when the women are going to be decathletes instead of just heptathletes?
I know there's already, from some people, there's a push for it. But the honest answer is I don't think the majority of girls want to.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about equality. It's like the decathlon is just really hard.
Yeah.
And I think more so, I think you go ask the guys if they would rather do a hep
Right.
rather than the girls going up to the deck. I think that would be probably more popular than the girls going up to the deck. Do I think that obviously the girls can do a decathlon? You know, there's no reason why they can't. And of course, it's ridiculous that it should be different. But I think we've gotten to a point where the girls sit there and watch the guys finishing the decathlon and they go, I have no interest in doing that.
All right.
Like just plain and simple. And it has nothing to do with equality. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's just like, I would much rather be competing in a heptathlon than in a decathlon.
Right.
I think, me personally, I think I probably would have been a better decathlete than I was a heptathlete. The heptathlon is, like you were talking about, such a speed-based event. Yeah. And speed was actually not my strong suit. I was a more, more powerful. I was a great jumper. I was a great thrower, but speed was the thing I was constantly working on. And in the decathlon, you add another throw and another jump. Yeah. And that definitely would have favored me. Yeah. Even so, do I want to do a decathlon? Probably not.
Yeah, another throw, another jump, and the ball, right?
Yeah. So it was add the vault and the discus. Right. And I think I probably would have been good in both of those. I had the upper body strength. It would have just, right. Technical work and timing. So.
All right. So we're getting ready to wrap this up. What do you think? What are your goals now that you're coaching at the Division I level? What would you like to see happen with your program, with your athletes, and then also with yourself? Do you see, this turning into a long career?
I will start with about my athletes. I honestly, this year I had no idea what to expect. I didn't recruit any of the athletes that I had this year because it was my first season. Right. I was kind of stepping into a situation that was unknown, and I felt very, very lucky with the athletes that I had just, acquired. I had several conference champions. I had 5 athletes go to NCAA regionals. I'll say the next step is I didn't have anybody go to nationals. So right. I think in the future we'd love to see a couple athletes get to the national
regionals to the nationals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think so. That's that would be the next step for a lot of the athletes. I think also we definitely want to see some conference championship teams. Texas State has been pretty competitive in the Sun Belt Conference. We were second on the men's and the women's side indoors. So we're right there. And I think it would be really cool to kind of just become that dominant team in the Sun Belt Conference. But yeah, we want to have a presence at the national meet. So that's the goal. And that's kind of what I'm seeing when I recruit. I'm not going to get the, number 1 or 2 jumpers in the country to commit to Texas State. And that's just the reality of it. At UCLA, it's a little different. You can kind of have the pick and everyone wants to be there. And I have to be the one to convince people a lot of the time that Texas State can offer them everything that, a lot of the Power 5 schools can. Right. And so what I have to do is I have to have the confidence in myself as a coach to be able to develop people. So my thing is it's about me having an eye for people that I can see growing a lot. So maybe I'll get the people that were 5th and 6th at state or something like that, right. Which is still awesome, but right. But they're not the ones necessarily going to, the very top tier schools. Right. And then it's just about finding, people that are right for our program and kind of going from there. And when you get people that they're happy with the fit, magical things can happen. And so that's kind of what we're looking for. I'll say this, for me personally, I wasn't really looking to be a coach. I'll say when I ended my career as an athlete, I mean, I had been coaching the whole time, and it was something that I both as a volunteer at UCLA and then at Rice, and then I was doing private coaching as well. And it's something that I gravitated towards, and I was naturally, I was probably coaching my teammates while I was still an athlete at UCLA, honestly. That's just my personality. And so it's like I was trying to crawl away, and track just keeps grabbing me by the ankles and pulling me back.
Right.
But so the answer is, like, I don't necessarily have aspirations to move up and, on this coaching ladder per se, or to become a head coach or anything like that. I just want to be in a place and with people that I am enjoying and I'm happy and I'm getting a lot out of, which, I mean, and that's where I am right now. I'm really fulfilled with what I'm doing. It's a hard and a stressful life, and every college coach knows that. It's probably the most exhausting job for 6 months, right? But it's one of those things where it's like I'm either cursing things out or sitting there being like, I can't believe this is my job. I'm so lucky. So it's one of those every day.
Yeah, I hear you.
But so, I mean, personally is, I don't know. I'm just going to take it day by day, year by year, and kind of see where my life takes me. I'm very much I'll call it a fatalist. I believe everything is happening as it should, and who am I to fight it?
Right.
I trust in myself and my abilities, both as a coach and then as just a human being, and trust that I'm going to be successful with whatever I end up doing, whether that is coaching or something else. So I'm not stressed.
The last thing, did you and the boyfriend, are you guys still together? Are you guys married? What's going on with you guys?
We are very much together. We live together here in Texas, and he actually has a job at University of Texas, not in athletics, but he just works there now, and I'm down at Texas State, and we are very happy, and things are going really well.
Awesome. Well, Kendall, it has been a distinct pleasure. I'm so glad that you took the time to spend with us here on Raise the Bar. I'm anxious to get feedback. I want to keep this relationship going. I want to get more Bruins. I've got Rodney Van Jr., who was playing football on the team back in earlier when Carl Durrell was coaching. I had him last year and I don't even know if that one's podcast has even come out yet. We're still churning these out. But, he was a former football player that did track and in high school. And I just go, man, Rodney, you and I got to do another one. And then we got to just start getting more Bruins in, and having
his little sister was my teammate at UCLA.
Really?
Yeah. Monique, she was also a heptathlete and was my teammate my first 2 years there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely the connection there, but I can I got a lot of good ones that I can hook you up with too. There's lots of Bruins around. So
I got to get Coach Curran on here, because everybody's got to listen to Curran talk for a while. And then from Coach Frazier, that the last time I saw Coach John was 4 or 5 years ago when I came for a visit to campus, and he took me up to the top 10 lists so I could take a picture of my face by one. And then I haven't seen Art for a while. I remember the coaches. So there's still a bunch of coaches I'd like to get at. Mike Powell, I just walked into someone, I had seen Mike 10 years ago. And then, I'd love to get him. He's another guy that was on the team with me at UCLA. We're both seniors the same year. John Smith, great sprint coach. Steve Lang, another great jump coach, that I think are local, would be good. But yeah, it's a connection. I'd love to keep that going and growing. You mentioned Rodney Van, his dad, he was Rodney Van Jr. His dad, senior, went to high school with me at Millikan. in Long Beach.
Oh, you know.
So yeah, we bumped into each other on a golf course, and said, because he had all UCLA stuff on his bag. And I'm like, were you a fan or did you play? And he's like, I played football there. I'm like, okay. And I said, what's your name? He's Rodney Van. I'm like, Rodney Van? I went to school with a Rodney Van senior. He goes, yeah, that was my dad. He goes, he's the only one in my family that went to Millikan. The rest of us all went to Poly.
Ah.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Well, Kendall, again, thank you so much. And we'll definitely stay in touch. Want to keep up on, I know the recruiting stuff and what you can show on your feed is probably kind of limited because of the D1 stuff. So I'm all about trying to grow, the track and field as much as possible, especially jumps. And I think we do a really crappy job of that. I did a podcast just last week with my mentor, Alan Hankel, who used to coach Doug Nordquist, and Lauren Magnuson, who was a jumper at Chico State and qualified for trials one year. And we spent like an hour and a half troubleshooting how we would fix track and field in the United States to make it bigger, and make it more popular and everything else. I'm like, one of the greatest, athletic achievements are going on all the time, and nobody knows about it, over here, because we're losing the battle to all the major sports. And we were even bemoaning the fact that it seems like the numbers are dropping, overseas, which is surprising to me to hear, because for years it's always been, it's huge over in Europe, and then we're hearing now that those numbers are starting to get smaller too. So I'm like, man, we got to do something to save this sport that we love.
Yeah. Hey, whatever little part we can play, let's do it. And, maybe this podcast is a small part of it. So. Hey,
yeah, well, it's a small podcast so far, but hopefully it's going to get bigger. We get great names on like yourself, and thank you for lending your time, your expertise, and your opinions and your everything else with us, Kendall. And the best of luck to you in the future. Say hello to your better half for me, and that's a possible another podcast. Who knows? I'm always trying to get jumpers.
Yeah, he's got an interesting story as well. That's for sure.
I bet. Yeah, my experience with the multis though this far, after working 1 year with some of them when I was at Vanguard, is like you said, man. My first day there, I walked in and I've got just a few jumpers, and the multis come over, and the lead multi gal, Juliana, she comes over and she's like, okay, here's the schedule. And she just starts telling me exactly what's going to go on. She's like, we're going to do this, and then we're going to jump with you, and then we're going to go do this. And I'm like, well, okay, then let's get to work. It was just like, she had it all, everything was mapped out. And I was just like, I was so impressed. I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Lots of, high jumpers have that reputation of being just like, whatever we're going to do today is fine. And I'm here to say that that's probably true, but yeah, that was an amazing thing watching this year. All right, Kendall, God bless you guys. Stay healthy and happy out there in Texas. And let's find a meet. We both end up in the same place.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm sure we'll talk again very soon.
All right.
Thanks, Troy.
All righty. Bye-bye. And that wraps us up with Kendall Gustafson, the jumps coach and working with the multis at Texas State University, a Division I school in Texas, in I think she said the Sun Belt League. I'm gonna have to look up and see who the other teams in that league are. They came in second, both men and women, in the indoor season, is what I heard there. And she's a Bruin. She grew up out here, loves it out here, and is now in Texas with another Bruin as her head coach, John Frazier, a friend of mine, a former teammate of mine from our senior year at UCLA, which was 1986, which was way back there. Don't want to tell anybody how old I am now, but again, thank you for spending time here with us on Raise the Bar. My next guest, I am not sure who is coming on next. There's a couple people that we have in mind. So as soon as I know that, I will let you know. But until then, this is Troy Haynes with Raise the Bar signing off. We will be with you soon.